The FBI is asking about 3 weekends before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Not one, 3. January 11th, January 24th, January 31st. 3 separate dates, all Saturdays or the following Sunday morning, all within a 20-day span leading up to the night Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home in the Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona. Investigators have been quietly canvassing neighbors in the Catalina Foothills community, asking residents for home security footage from January 11th and January 24th specifically. According to journalist Brian Enton, who has maintained sustained ground-level reporting on this case, FBI agents who reviewed footage from a nearby home did not say what they were looking for on those dates, but the pattern of the request tells its own story. Both dates fall on weekends. Both dates precede the abduction by exactly 3 weeks and 1 week, respectively. And the family of Nancy Guthrie has publicly asked the community to focus its attention specifically on the late evening of January 11th. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, who has been one of the most consistently direct voices in the public commentary on this case, described what the January 11th interest likely means. She said the masked individual captured on doorbell footage on February 1st, who she calls Porch Guy, was conducting a trial run on January 11th before returning to carry out the actual abduction. That reading is supported by the physical evidence from the doorbell camera. The FBI released footage showing the individual at Nancy's door on February 1st attempting 2 methods to disable the camera. First, light taps to knock it free. When that did not immediately work, he reached for foliage from a potted plant on the porch to cover the lens. The FBI confirmed that data from the device was successfully recovered because the cloud upload had already occurred. A person who visited the property on January 11th and then again on January 24th, before returning on January 31st into February 1st with a 25-liter backpack, a firearm, and a plan, is not an opportunist. That person is a planner. Someone who returned 3 times to the same neighborhood across 3 weekends before executing a kidnapping is someone who was not guessing about any detail of what they were doing. Day 73. No arrest, no named suspect, no confirmed proof of life. A $1 million reward from the Guthrie family and a $100,000 federal reward both remain unclaimed. This is the Febry Report. Let us go through everything that happened this week. The motive debate took a definitive turn this week. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer posted publicly on Sunday night, writing that law enforcement has known the motive for this abduction from the very beginning of the investigation. She said the motive is simple: kidnapping for ransom. She said Nancy Guthrie sadly died. She said the kidnappers tortured the family with 2 ransom notes, knowing the FBI's protocol requires proof of life before payment can be recommended. And she said the simplest explanation, using Occam's razor, is usually the correct one. Her post added 4 words that have been generating significant analysis. Even the Guthrie family knows. That phrase points directly to Savannah Guthrie's public interview last month, in which she described a conversation with her brother about whether the motivation was financial. She said in that interview, "I don't know that it's because she's my mom and somebody thought, oh, that lady has money, we can make a quick buck. I mean, that would make sense." But she also said the family does not know for certain. Coffindaffer's read is that the family has arrived at the same conclusion law enforcement has held throughout, that the abduction was about money, that it went wrong almost immediately because of Nancy's age, her medical condition, her dependence on a pacemaker and daily medication that was left behind in her home, and that the 2 ransom notes sent to media organizations in the first days were sent by people who either could not provide proof of life or chose not to, because Nancy was already gone. Sheriff Chris Nanos has consistently refused to confirm or deny any specific motive publicly, citing the integrity of the active investigation. He has said the department has had strong beliefs about what happened since day one, and that those beliefs have not diminished. He has not said what those beliefs are. The Febry report notes that Coffindaffer's assessment is not confirmed by any law enforcement agency. Nancy Guthrie is officially a missing person, and official declaration about her status has been made. However, Coffindaffer's specific framing, that the motive was simple, that investigators have always known it, and that something went wrong inside the operation, is consistent with the public evidence in a way that deserves serious treatment. A former FBI agent citing direct communication with law enforcement, publishing on the record under her name about the most closely watched missing persons case in the country, is not speculation in the ordinary sense. It is a specific, sourced, credentialed observation. And it represents the clearest expert statement made about the trajectory of this case in weeks. The Ransom picture now has 3 distinct tracks, and understanding all 3 is essential to following where the investigation stands. Track 1, the original 2 notes. These arrived in the first week of February, demanding $4 million and then $6 million with hard deadlines. According to reporting confirmed previously, the FBI assessed these notes as likely authentic communications from the actual abductors. The family was prepared to pay. Investigators believed they had a method of tracing the Bitcoin wallet and made a small deposit as part of that effort. The trace failed. The deadline passed. The original note writers have not communicated since. Track 2, the secondary notes. A separate individual, not claiming to be the abductor, has sent multiple communications to a media organization claiming to have knowledge of who is responsible. Recent notes in this track claimed Nancy is dead in one message, then claimed a sighting of her alive in Sonora, Mexico in the next. The credibility of these communications has been widely questioned by former investigators. The FBI has received copies of all notes in this track. Track 3. What Coffindaffer is now calling the final chapter. Her view, based on what law enforcement has communicated to her, is that the Ransom story ended on February 9th, when the deadline passed without payment, without proof of life, and without further contact from the original note writers. In her analysis, that silence is the conclusion of the financial operation, not a pause, and the subsequent notes from the secondary source are not evidence that the original operation is ongoing. They are, in her view, opportunists exploiting public attention on a case that generated national coverage. For this track to be correct, the original abductors concluded their operation at or shortly after February 9th. They have not been identified, they have not been arrested, and the investigation, despite FBI resources, thousands of tips, and significant public attention, has not produced a public result. The Febry report asks the question this framing demands. If investigators have known the motive from day one, have had strong beliefs that have not diminished, and are now in the 73rd day of an active investigation with no arrest, what is the specific obstacle between what they believe and what they can prove? That question has not been answered publicly. The second major development this week was not investigative. It was social, and it matters. Police presence has increased in the neighborhood of Annie Guthrie, Nancy's daughter and the last family member to see her alive. The reason, confirmed by the Pima County Sheriff's Department, is harassment. Online commentators and YouTubers have been filming in Annie's neighborhood, approaching residents and generating complaints. The Sheriff's Department confirmed it received complaints specifically from Annie in relation to her neighborhood and responded by increasing patrols. Annie Guthrie and her husband, Tommaso Cioni, have been the subject of sustained online speculation since the early days of this case. He was the last person to see Nancy. He drove her home at approximately 9:45 p.m. on January 31st. Annie's car was taken into evidence in the initial days of the investigation as part of what authorities described as the normal course of the inquiry. A news report in the early days of the investigation claimed a law enforcement source described Tommaso as a prime suspect. That characterization was disputed and was never confirmed by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. The department subsequently issued a clear and explicit statement. All members of the Guthrie family, including all siblings and spouses, have been cleared as suspects. The family is victims, plain and simple. Savannah Guthrie, during her public interview last month, addressed the speculation about her family directly. She called it cruel. She said the whispers and speculation pile pain upon pain. She said she does not understand it and never will. The Febry report stands with that. There is no public evidence implicating any member of the Guthrie family in this crime. The increased police presence in Annie's neighborhood is not a response to an investigative development. It is a response to the fact that people who are grieving in a case with no answers have become targets of harassment by individuals who have substituted speculation for journalism and cruelty for accountability. Annie Guthrie lost her mother. She was the last person to see her. She has been cooperating with investigators, and she is now dealing with people filming her neighborhood because the internet has decided she is a suspect, despite the official investigation having cleared her. This week also saw news that Hoda Kotb will reunite with Savannah Guthrie as co-anchors on the Today Show in Craig Melvin's absence. That reunion will be watched by millions of people who have been following this case since the beginning. Savannah has been back at her desk for a week now. Her presence at that anchor desk every morning is, according to former FBI agents who have commented on this case, one of the most sustained pieces of investigative pressure applied to whoever is responsible. They counted on the story fading. It has not faded. The overall picture on day 73 has one new element that compresses the analytical frame. A credentialed expert has now said publicly that she believes the motive was simple and that Nancy did not survive it. That assessment has not been confirmed. The case is officially open, but it sits alongside a body of evidence that is consistent with it. The original note writers went silent after February 9th. No proof of life has been produced. Nancy's medication was left in her home. She was 84 years old with a pacemaker. The operation required a sedative agent, based on the accelerometer and cardiac data pattern that investigators have been analyzing. Someone who planned the acquisition of a controlled pharmaceutical compound planned a short operation, not a long-term captivity. The 3 pre-abduction visits, January 11th, January 24th, and January 31st, tell us that the planner was patient, careful, and committed. They came back 3 times before executing. They knew the neighborhood. They knew the property. They chose weekends when traffic was low and streets were quiet. The investigation is looking for that person. It has been for 73 days. The DNA mixture from inside the home is still in active analysis, with new deconvolution software being urgently developed by private companies and university researchers. The cell tower data from the night of January 31st is being analyzed. The blockchain record of the Bitcoin wallets associated with the ransom notes remains under forensic review. None of that has yet produced a public result, and the question of when it will, if it will, and what the answer looks like when it arrives is one that cannot be answered from outside the investigation. The tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI, anonymous at tips.fbi.gov. The reward is active. If you saw something in the Catalina Foothills on January 11th, January 24th, or any other date between January 1st and February 2nd, a vehicle, a person, on foot, something that seemed out of place in the neighborhood pattern, that observation belongs to investigators right now. The Febry report stays on this.